Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick too. Today I'm going to be going over what I believe to be a nearly perfected version of probably the best build this season, the Necromancer Bloodwave build. This is probably one of the strongest builds I've ever used in Diablo, mainly because you can immediately just do unbelievable amounts of damage the second that you just swap to the build. Literally within a couple of hours of me swapping to it, I was doing a pit 100 and in like 2 minutes. Right out the gate, the damage for this build is just completely disgusting to the point to where you don't really have to scale the damage up like crazy. Obviously, I did try to get as much damage as possible, but one of the things I was most interested in was actually speeding up the build. The build is very strong from a damage perspective, but from a speed perspective, right out the gate, it's a little slow, it's a little cumbersome to play around, so I wanted to kind of address some of those problems and make it to where you can actually speed farm content and have a really good time doing so. So there's some things that I mainly wanted to showcase by making this video, and this is ultimately what I think to be the most versatile version of the build, as it is still insanely fast, very tanky, one-shots literally everything in the game as long as you're not trying to do a pit 150. If you want to do a pit 150, this is not the build for you, or sorry, not the video for you rather. You can easily take this build into very high tiers of the pit, but this one is not optimized around doing pit 150 because in my opinion there's almost no reason to do that. You'd rather just do 99.9% of content very fast while one-shotting everything. Want to do pit 150s, however, I would recommend checking out Makuna's channel. Without further ado though, let's get into it. I do want to preface this by saying that normally my gear, when I make these sort of perfected videos, my gear is a little bit more optimized. My gear is pretty decent at this point, but honestly I just haven't been feeling this season as much as I usually have, so my character's not like super insane. I've got it to where I'm pretty happy with it, and I figured I would just make a video because I wanted to showcase some things that make the build a lot faster. Real quick, let's talk about how the build actually works. Everything will be timestamped, so if you already know this, feel free to skip. The build is pretty simple in how it functions. Basically, Bloodwave itself just does an enormous amount of damage. They buffed a lot of the ultimate skills this patch, or this season rather, so Bloodwave just does a disgusting amount of damage, and it also has a scaling vector in the form of Bloodwave's damage is increased by 30% multiplicatively of your damage while healthy and damage while fortified. We get a ton of this by just getting damage while fortified on our gear and damage while healthy in our Paragon board, so ends up scaling our damage to the moon. Then we use the title aspect, so our Bloodwave just does 480% more damage, which is disgusting. And then we also happen to just throw on top Customized Legacy, which gives us a 300% extra damage increase for our Bloodwave, makes our Bloodwave have a chance to deal double damage, give us more cooldown reduction on it. Throw all these things together and just scale up your damage as much as you can, and Bloodwave is inherently just going to be very strong. Another thing that's very nice about Bloodwave is that we get the cooldown back. Obviously, with ultimate skills, the biggest issue is cooldown. You can scale your cooldown reduction a lot via ultimate skill cooldown reduction tempers on your gear and just getting a lot of skill ranks for your Bloodwave, but also anytime you just press your Bloodwave and then you pick up some of these blood orbs, you're going to get it back via using the fast blood aspect here, where picking up blood orbs reduces your ultimate cooldown. We want to do this anyways because another way we're scaling our damage is by making our Bloodwave overpower. Every time that we pick up these blood orbs and it overheals us for a certain amount, our next skill is going to be a guaranteed overpower, and it's also going to do double damage. Scaling it to overpower makes it just do significantly more damage. Overpower by itself is a disgustingly broken mechanic. It's going to make you do more damage based on your health and your fortify. So having a guaranteed form of overpower that you're going to be wanting to do anyways because you need to pick up these blood orbs to reduce the cooldown, it just matches perfectly with the build. One of the main things that I have changed, or rather that is going to enable a lot of speed clearing, and one of the biggest issues with the build is your ability to actually pull in a lot of mobs. A lot of the time you would use corpse tendrils for this, and it just feels a little slow to play with. So one thing that I did is I added Igni Rune paired with Vortex, and this is how you're seeing me pretty much every time I cast my Bloodwave. It sucks all of the dudes in. We love sucking dudes, and then we get all of them together and just instantly one-shot them, so we don't have to have this weird playstyle like waiting around. This single change makes the build's quality of life like nearly double in effectiveness. It is just way more satisfying to play the build like this. And if you just use Igni plus Cry, almost every time that you use your Bloodwave, you're going to suck all the dudes in. It depends on how long you wait, because Igni's offering is based on how long you have in between each cast. If I just spam cast, you can see I'm not going to have a Vortex every single Bloodwave cast. But if I wait like 1 second longer in between each cast, then Igni will have stored up enough offering for me to have it. But on average, you'll have this about every one or every other cast, which is more than enough for mapping. And then for my last rune, Another thing for just more movement is I just went Bach plus Jaw, so you just get offering based on how much you move, and I just have teleport. This is literally just so that I can run around and do maps faster, just because the damage is already so high that I didn't feel as though I needed more damage via my runes. I just wanted to go for some survivability, but if you, or sorry, for some movement. If you wanted more actual damage, you would go with Quacks, but I decided to just go for the movement, as once the build is set up enough, you have more than enough mobility. Talk about gear and stuff in a sec, but let's just go over the skills real quick. The skills are pretty basic. We don't really use almost any of them. I pretty much set up the build to be a one-button build so that you can just run around and just press Blood Wave. That's the fastest way to really take advantage of the build. All the skills are kind of just here to give you extra damage. So Reap, because it is Darkness skill, gives you extra damage, and if you ever feel like you're taking damage, you can use it to give yourself damage reduction. Corpse Tendrils is nice if you're doing like Infernal Hordes and you need to suck more dudes in, and you don't want to wait on the Igni, but you don't really have to press it. Blood Mist I was using for crit chance here and there, but now I am crit capped, so I don't really need it anymore, and it's kind of just there for defense. Blight is there for extra damage against bosses, and then Corpse Explosion is there as a darkness skill to give us more damage. And also, we do have Flesh Eater in the Paragon board, so you can spam it here and there if you want to get a little bit of extra damage multiplier. And then, of course, we have Blood Wave. The skill tree is pretty basic, nothing insane here. I'll just quickly show it. I go with Reap in the corpse form. You don't really need it, but I just had it left over. Blight with the extra damage increase. Blood Mist with the crit. This will give you crit damage, so if you use it against a boss, it is 10% more damage, but nothing crazy. Then I have Titan's Fall, a lot of points on this from my weapon. Corpse Explosion with Darkness, increased damage after consuming a corpse. And then Death's Embrace, Death's Approach for just extra damage. Amplify, Decrepify. We have Decrepify permanently because we have this on our boots. Decrepify is nice for cooldown reduction and to just make the mobs deal less damage to us. Corpse Tendrils with the Blood Orbs, so we get more Blood Orbs just to kind of smooth out the playstyle of the build. Whenever you do press a Corpse Tendrils, hey, you get a little bit more Blood Orbs, but Blood Wave itself spawns Blood Orbs, so you don't have to really rely on this that much. We have Vulnerable through one of our Witch powers, so we don't need it here. We have Tides of Blood, which is a lot of damage, Coalesce Blood damage, and then all this stuff. Reaper's Pursuit is how we're getting more damage and move speed based on how many darkness skills are on our bar, so that's why we like to have the Corpse Explosion to be darkness. Terror and Gloom are just more damage. Blood Wave obviously maxes out, and then it's a lot of damage. And Blood Wave has a nice benefit of giving you Fortify and giving you damage reduction when you press it. You get Fortify via Customized Legacy here, so that just it's an all-around insane defensive and offensive package. Finality, Memento Mori, Standalone, just all good stuff. And then Inspiring Leader for extra crit chance, and then of course Rathma's Vigor. When it comes to your skeletal guys, if you're very early into the build, you want to sacrifice defenders so that you can get resistances. Otherwise, I go into Reapers for 20% increased shadow damage, which works for our Blood Wave because we are using Ultimate Shadow, which makes our Blood Wave deal shadow damage. Crit chance is simply just going to be worse than the sacrifice for the shadow damage because crit chance, we don't have a lot of crit damage, and we're able to get crit capped without this. We go Skeletal Mages for a 30% overpower multi, and then we also go Golems for a 35% crit damage multi. For our legendary aspects, I just went for a lot of consistency and just straight up damage. So on the two-hander, we want to have a title, of course, because it's just 470%, 480% damage multi, which is just absolutely disgusting. On Amulet, I went for of the Damned, so it's just, if I had a better aspect, be 83% increased damage all the time because our Blood Wave does shadow damage, and we always are applying a curse to an enemy via Decrepify, so that is insane for us. And then I have Vehement. This is 30% increased damage, but also 2 ultimate skill ranks, which is also another 30% damage on average. And it also reduces the cooldown of our Blood Wave, so it just makes it a lot more consistent to play with. And then Fast Blood, of course, you can use this on the Amulet until you get a pretty decent roll, just so that you get the cooldown on your Blood Wave back pretty quickly. But once you have a good roll, you want to move it over to a ring or gloves. Gloves, we go with Ultimate Shadow to make our Blood Wave a darkness skill, which is enables a lot of different ways to scale the build. Utility on the boots, we go for the curse, so we always have Decrepify around us. And then on the chest, for our Uber Uniques, I like to go for Shroud of False Death. It just gives us +1 to all passives. It gives us life, which is technical damage increase. All staffed, which is also damage, but +1 to all passives is just disgusting. You know, +1 here, 5% damage, damage reduction, damage there via crit, damage. There's so much damage that you get from this chest piece. It's insane, and it is good for defense as well, because a lot of the points in there are also defense related. So this is just crazy. Added benefit of giving you stealth here and there, and you get a little bit of movement speed, but Overall, this is just nice for damage. And then for the helmet, I go for Harlequin Crest. The reason for this is that Air of Perdition is technically slightly more damage, but only very slightly. And I like the fact that this has inherent cooldown reduction on it. It gives you flat armor, so it's very easy to reach your armor caps. And the crit chance on Air of Perdition is kind of unnecessary because you get enough crit chance via just your gear, so you don't really have to sacrifice anything, and you get enough movement speed through your gear as well. So the benefit of Air of Perdition is literally just 60% damage in the core skills, which actually core skills doesn't work for the Blood Wave, so it's like very, very slightly better from a damage perspective, but Harlequin Crest gives you more HP, more armor, and cooldown reduction, so it just makes it feel very smooth to play, and you get 20% DR, so you're like very, very tanky. For speed farming, this is 100% to play, because the 4 ranks gives you cooldown reduction, because every rank reduces the cooldown of Blood Wave, and it just gives you so much damage. So I would always go for Harlequin there. And that's pretty much it for the aspects. Now let's just go over piece by piece and how you want to masterwork it and what is ideal. So for helmets, for Harlequin, I like to try to get a greater affix of life and or cooldown reduction. And then ideally you want to masterwork life. I got very lucky with mine. I hit all life. Resource is irrelevant here. Ideally you'd want double GA and cooldown and life, but it's okay. I'm pretty happy with this. Life, the reason that it is good is overpowered damage is based on your total life. So if you have more life, you're going to do more damage. But also, the more life that you have, the less blood orbs you need to pick up for Rathma's Vigor, because the amount of Rathma's Vigor is based on your actual overhealing that it does. I've done the math on this, and technically I should only need to pick up 2 blood orbs to instantly get it back. But you can see that just picking up 2 does not get me to 15. I believe that the math on this is incorrect, or the way that Blizzard has it is like hard capped at a certain thing. So maybe at a certain point you reach too much HP to where it doesn't instantly do this. My goal, side tangent, my goal was to make it to where I only needed to pick up 1 blood orb to instantly get back the 15 stack, so I didn't have to pick up multiple blood orbs every single time to just speed up the build. Unfortunately, that isn't possible despite how much max healing and max life you go into, but either way, once you get enough, like about 20k HP, you only need to pick up about 3 or 4 of these on average to instantly get this back, so you don't have to backtrack into 50 orbs all the time, which is really nice. So that's why max HP is good. So Shroud of False Death, ideally you want the GA on life or all stats, and then Masterwork, try to get all life or all stats. And of course for the runes again, I have Bach Jaw paired with Igni and Cry for movement. On the gloves, you want either int or max HP GA. You do want crit chance, but you don't need GA crit chance on any piece. However, if you do get crit chance GA on one piece, then you could likely drop it off of another, but there isn't really any other stat to go for that matters. So I would prioritize getting the GA on life or intelligence here. And then you want damage while fortified temper on every single piece, because that's going to convert into a multi via the blood wave here. So that's why we care about that. And you want all of your greater affixes ideally to hit the damage while fortified, because it is a high value, giving you additive damage and converting it to a multiplier. So that's very good. I have Corpse Tendril size. It literally does not matter what your utility temper is, because I basically don't ever press the Corpse Tendrils. You could do Curse size, but that also doesn't really matter. So I would just make sure to get high value of the damage while fortified, and whatever your other utility temper is, don't worry too much about it. Customized Legacy, the only thing you care about is chance for Blood Wave to deal damage, and you want the aspect to be as close to 300% as possible. If you get a triple Masterwork landing on the chance for Blood Wave to deal double, it'll be nearly 100%, and in that case, you do not have to temper it onto your weapon. So you get Titan's Fall instead, which is more damage. Talk about that in a sec. Boots, you want int or max HP GA. Try to get movement speed, and ideally the Masterworks all on int or max HP, either or, not a big difference there. Weapon, you want int, max HP, overpower damage, damage while fortified, and then you want to temper on Titan's Fall. You can do Titan's Fall or Finality. Titan's Fall is just slightly more damage against elites, which is very good. You see I have 84% increased damage here. That's pretty insane. And you want all of your Masterworks to land on either damage while fortified or Titan's Fall. I think Titan's Fall is slightly more damage here, but either or is going to be good for you. If you do not have Customized Legacy with a greater affix of chance for Blood Wave to deal double damage, you'll want to Masterwork that instead of, temper that instead of Titan's Fall. That'll be slightly better for you, but eventually this is a perfected version of the build, right? So you would like to have the double chance here, so then you can get the Titan's Fall here. Because going over 100% chance for deal double damage does not do anything. And of course, you want the title aspect there. And then for the rings, they can both look identical. This one is pretty ideal. Int max HP GA, crit chance on there as well to reach crit cap, and then damage while fortified, and you want to have that masterworked ideally. And then ultimate cooldown reduction is pretty nice. And just try to have the masterworks land on damage while fortified, but if it lands on int or max HP, that's okay too. And both rings you want to look basically exactly the same. Amulet, mine has... you want it to have greater affix intelligence. These are very easy to get. You'll see them all the time. Outside of the intelligence, I just happen to have armor here. If I take this off, I am not armor capped anymore, but I would be much closer to armor capped if I had Rahir with 15% armor, and if I just went for one armor roll on either boots or gloves, and if I had another one of these things to give me 160 flat armor, then I'd be armor capped. But you can see this is just giving me my armor cap right now. Ideally, you want, for passives on the amulet, you want intelligence greater affix. That's very easy to get. And then you want to just try to roll on one of the passives. So I have Tides of Blood here. This is the best passive that you can possibly get. Outside of that, Coalesce Blood is decent. Terror is decent. Gloom is decent. I would go for the two that I would go for all the time would be Tides of Blood and Gloom if you have the option. I believe you can get Finality, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. But I would just go for Intelligence, Tides of Blood, and then any other passive that is good, or just maybe max HP is pretty easy to get. And of course, Temper on damage while fortified and ultimate cooldown. All of mine hit Tides of Blood GA here. I would probably do Tides of Blood or Intelligence. Intelligence is good because it's percentage based rather than flat, so that is nice. And that works well with one of the Witch powers. Let's talk about the Witch powers real quick, and also what I have socketed into my gems here. So what I went for is Killing Wind here. This gives us 15% crit chance and 25% movement speed, so it makes movement speed capping yourself very easy, and it makes reaching crit cap very easy. You can see right now, does it count as me being in combat right now? No, it does not, but I have 78.8% crit chance, and then I have the Witchcraft power Hex spec, so I have 20% crit chance, so I'm at 98.8% crit chance here, and that is largely due in part to having Killing Wind and also having crit chance on all my gear. Then I have, what is this one called? I don't know what it's called. Deal 15% increased overpower damage to hex enemies. We are permanently hexing enemies via the Witchcraft powers that I'll show you. So these are the two that I have. I didn't want to farm out the last one. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I got kind of burnt out. But the last one that you would want would be actually Voice of the Stars here. Your ultimate skills deal 10% damage, and it counts as an Eldritch Growth, Decay, and Psych. You could also use Duststone. They are relatively similar in power. The reason that we don't do Friend of the Bog is you need 3 or more decay and witch power, growth and decay witch powers, which are not ideal in my opinion. And I'll show you the witch power setup that I have that I quite like. So I go for 3 Eldritch because I wanted to use this one here at the very end here, Voice of the Stars, for just 10% damage all the time. But I didn't want to grind this out. This would be ideal, and then we get all the stuff that we want. So I do Hex of Flames because it's Eldritch, and then I do Doom Orb also because it is Eldritch, and this is very, very nice. You pair both of these together with Shaken Soul, so you just instantly always apply Vulnerable to enemies, and then you can pair this with Hex Spec because you're using Hex of Flames, and it literally instantly hits enemies with Doom Orb. You're always getting the 20% crit chance via Hex Spec here, and then Force of Will is just super overpowered, always good. Gives you a damage multi of just overpower damage all the time, and Soul Harvest is also insane, and it also is a growth and decay, which is pretty nice. So we have 3 Eldritch here in the form of Shaken Soul, Doom Orb, and Hex of Flames, and these just pair super nicely together with the Hex spec. And then Soul Harvest is, just insane. So we get the 2 that we really care about, which are really good for damage, and then we also get the utility through the Vulnerable application and the 20% crit chance all the time. This is my ideal setup. I don't think Pyranado is good at all because it is very infrequent that it pulls enemies, and we have the guaranteed pull via the Spiritborn with the Cry thing. When it comes to incenses, if you are ever low on armor, I would highly recommend crafting or resistances, I'd highly recommend crafting the Soothing Spices incense. These are very cheap nowadays, and it's always good to have one active because it's going to give you increased XP. This is 150 armor, 10% max all res, very, very nice. And then also Redamine Buzz is very good because it's just straight up HP. But if you need more armor, use Song of the Mountain. And I always run around with the one that gives you 100% increased intelligence. So I'm going to craft some of these. I think I already have some on me. And then for the flask, or the elixir rather, you have so much additive damage that a lot of these aren't really going to help you out that much. Like crit damage or something is very, very low value. So I always just go for the HP one. That's the only one that's technically a multiplier for us. So I'll do the intelligence, I'll do the max life, and then I'll also do where is the HP one? I think I need to craft one, or I'm blind. I'll just craft an HP one. We do Elixirs, and I believe it is Fortitude too. 20% increase HP is pretty nice because it's damage and defense. Now I'm just going to do a quick pit run to kind of demonstrate the build. I mean, it's pretty brain dead. I think you guys know how to play with it. If you're doing higher tiers of the pit, at the very start of the pit run, you want to do like a huge gather of mobs to get the biggest value out of the increased intelligence percent. But every single time at the first blood wave that you use in a run is not going to be guaranteed overpowered because the game doesn't count you as being healthy long enough. But otherwise, you kind of just EP into the mobs, press blood wave, and you want to make sure to pick up the blood orbs. You can see there that that attack was not overpower guaranteed because I did not pick up enough blood orbs the previous time. But build is pretty quick. Ideally, what you want to do is just, TP into mobs, press blood wave, do a little circle to pick up your blood orbs, and then just keep going and just do this over and over and over again. And I really like having the teleport because it just makes it so much smoother, especially the vortex pulling in all the mobs. Makes it really, really quick. I missed some elites there, so my total percent is a little low here, my bar. But yeah, I mean, this is, in my opinion, the best way to kind of play the build because it's just so much faster. Ordinarily, kind of needing to suck all the mobs in together is very, very annoying. And I like the Doom Orb just instantly applying the Vulnerable and applying the Hex, so I just guarantee have a ton of extra damage against mobs. But you can see right there, just pulling in all those mobs from super far away, so I don't have to wait. I can just go, 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 go. And that's kind of how I like to play these games. I don't like to be slowed down in really any capacity. And that was like one of the things bothering me with this build. Is like, yeah, the damage is crazy, but like, I don't feel like I can do Nightmare Dungeons quickly. It's still not the best build for Infernal Hordes, but I mean, for doing the pit, it kind of doesn't really get too much better than this. Like, obviously you can do it faster depending on the build that you're playing, but I mean, the fact that you can do like, higher tiers of the pit and still instantly one-shot every elite, like even damage reduction ones like those guys, very, very nice, so it's efficient for like glyph XP farming and stuff. So this is just my preferred way of setting it up, and when I did the Igni plus Cry thing, I was like, oh my god, that makes the build so much better. So I mainly wanted to make the video to kind of just showcase that, because having the access to just, doing that to the mobs is really, really nice. It was pretty garbage because I just had to backtrack because I skipped so many elites at the start because I wasn't really paying attention. On bosses, you don't really have to do anything. You can Blood Mist for a little bit of extra damage before you actually attack, but you can see, like, when you first zone in, a lot of your first attacks are not going to have the extra damage, but we just one-shot a dude on tier 110, right? And all my glyphs are leveled up. I just realized I forgot to show my Paragon board, so I will show that now, but it's going to be in the Mobalytics link down in the description, of course. But for my first board, I went for Dominate because there's some willpower here. I didn't go for all the willpower nodes. You could, but you have so much additive damage that getting more isn't really too important. You want to make sure to get all the max HP nodes, of course. But that's the first board. Second board is Bloodbath. I went for Abyssal for increased overpower damage and damage while fortified here. Very nice. And then I have more overpower damage here with healing received. Damage reduction while fortified is nice for just survivability. Here I went for Blood Begets Blood, which is quite good, and Amplify to buff the damage while healthy nodes. And then there's just Blood Orb healing, max HP, all that sort of stuff. Frailty, increased damage against enemies afflicted with a curse is pretty good. And I grabbed some attack speed here just to make the build feel a little bit nicer, more max HP, and Exploit for more damage. And then up here I went with Control. Doesn't work against bosses, but just generally mapping it is pretty good. We are crowd controlling enemies via Decrepify, so we always have that active. And then I went for Flesh Eater. I don't really proc this very often, but it is there. And then any extra nodes I've just been dumping into Intelligence because this is a multiplier for us, whereas getting more additive damage is heavily DR'd because we have so much already. But putting it here, we get increased damage to crowd controlled while getting more int. So any leftover points that you have with Paragon Board, I would just put all into int. So int, and then just grab literally all the int nodes that you can that you don't have to path towards too much. And that's probably your best bet. You also grab more resistance elements or more damage reduction, more blood orb healing if you feel like it, but at a certain point it doesn't really matter anymore. Pretty much it for the video. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.